help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. We are obviously in Texas today. Welcome back to the studio, Steve Carlin.
I am always glad to be here.
That actually is true. Because you live in godless Madison, Wisconsin. So today we have a very important topic, particularly relevant in a post-Roe world, which is who is having abortions and who's not having abortions. And I think we'll surprise some people today.
I think so too, because I myself was surprised when we were preparing for this episode of the podcast, and it really destroys a lot of the narratives that Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry have been so aggressive about perpetuating. There's a lot of myths here. We're going to cut through them. Some of them have already been cut through. I mean, how often do we have to say it? We'll keep saying it. All of the women who are going to be locked up and all the women who are going to be dying in the streets, still no reports on that. And here's some more myths that we can bust today on the 40 Days for Life podcast.
Where are all the dead women at? That is what Abby asked me months after, Abby Johnson, after Roe was overturned. So it's true. Where are all the dead women at? Before we get to who's having an abortion, who's not having an abortion, Steve, I was thinking about you as I was brushing my teeth.
It's not weird at all.
No relation. You have referenced on the podcast childhood Steve. And where's this going?
This is a deep dive here.
College Steve, high school Steve. And I was trying to enter into your world. You know I'm a big fan of Steve Carlin's mom.
Yes.
Okay.
We should have her on the show sometime.
Oh, man. When the YouTube videos go up, I want the real. Where's Steven? Where's Steven? I want the real stories. So I was thinking about this. What was your first car when you got your driver's license? What did you drive?
It was a 1993 Toyota Tercel, which they don't make anymore.
Great car.
The Corolla, I think, is the closest to it. My brother blew the engine because he didn't get the oil changed 20 miles short of 100,000. So that was a big disappointment.
There's no tension there with your brother.
No, I've been able to get over it in the last.
Did you come unglued though? Like you idiot, you didn't change the oil, you're lazy and all that?
I was at college, didn't have a car at college, so I was like, come on, man.
That was my brother's first car. It wasn't a 93. It was a 90 or something. But you'd hit a bump and the AC would stop, and then you'd have to hit another bump and the AC would come back on. It's pretty remarkable, but frustrating because it's so hot. Mine was a 1986 Ford F-150.
Nice.
4x4 where you had to get out of the truck and like turn the locks. That was the coolest truck ever. I would drive that now, but I'd be like the weird old midlife crisis guy. Wrecked it on my 17th birthday, leaving the great establishment of Applebee's, where everybody should spend their 17th birthday. It shows how my high school was.
You're in the neighborhood.
That's right. Tough times. So I was in the neighborhood and I pulled out and had a good right on red. My fault. Nobody was hurt, thankfully, but totaled my truck. And then I moved on to an 89 Honda Accord, who I named Old Blue. And you remember the old Accords? You turn on the lights and the lights flip up.
Yes.
Those were bad to the bone.
My parents had one when I was little, yeah.
Why don't they do that now? That's something like Tesla would do now. And young kids would be like, that's so cool, man. Elon made that up. And you're like, straight out of the 80s.
When I was in college, I was on my way to a summer job, and I was driving, and like 1 block from work, I'm in the middle of this busy intersection waiting to turn left, and the car just died, never ran again. And we replaced it with this 86 Pontiac Bonneville that we bought for like $500, and it had this analog clock, which we thought was totally sweet. And every time you'd start it, it would be like, vroom! And I think that thing got like 8 miles to the gallon, but we loved it.
Oh man. It's funny though too. The Japanese make the best cars in my opinion, and but that Honda Accord, it like leaked oil. But this is before the environment was a thing, and so I would buy like the case of oil at Walmart. You get like a case of oil for $9.50, like the Walmart brand, and it would run like basically through the engine as a 4-cylinder, and I just refilled it. But went through a lot of oil.
I had a car that was somewhat like that, and one time I put the oil back in, and I just forgot to put the cap to screw the cap back on, and so I smell. At this point, it's not just an oil leak or like it's burning a little, like it's burning right off the engine. It smells terrible, so I pop the hood. I'm like, shoot. So I take it in. I had to get the vehicle like steam cleaned, like the engine itself steam cleaned, and my mechanic helped me with that. And then I did it a second time, and I took it to a different mechanic because I could not show my face.
I didn't even know you could steam clean an engine. No, so my brother, after the Tercel, he had a 90 Camry with leather and a sunroof, and this was 1998. So it was an 8-year-old Camry
nice wheels for
with
it.
leather. It was our neighbor. I think our neighbor like felt bad, and my brother bought this car for $4,000, and it only had like, I don't know, 70,000 miles on it, which for a Camry was awesome. And as you know, I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast, my brother played baseball in college at UD, and then he was able to go to the Cape Cod League where all the pro scouts are. And he was a pitcher. He ended up having a 1.4 ERA or something ridiculous. So he got drafted into Major League Baseball. Okay. But when he was drafted by Tampa Bay. But before then, when he went to play in the Cape Cod League, he left his Camry. And we're all excited for him because he's going to play in this awesome league with all these like college all-stars. And he is my older brother by 2 years. And he's like, hey, you need to like start my car a couple times a week, maybe drive it. Like if you're going to a movie or something, just keep it active. I blow all that off. Okay, I don't listen. So he's coming back.
You're serious about that?
You're serious about that? So he's coming back 3.5 months, and my dad is like, hey, on Tuesday or whatever, I got to go get Jake from the airport. And I'm like, oh, crap, he's coming back. so I have like I go and I get his key. Like I forgot where the key was. It was really bad. And the car won't turn. It takes me forever to turn it. And when I turn it, it's just like shaking.
Okay.
Oh, it's brutal.
So did you get it running or not?
It's running,
Okay,
but
it's not
it's
smooth.
shaking,
All
and
right.
I'm like, I don't think I can back it out of the drive. Like, it feels like it's going to throw a rod or something. It's really bad. And I thought, I should have listened to him. So
Didn't do that when I started it yesterday.
I did the responsible thing, which is call my high school buddies who, quote, know a lot about cars. So we have a gathering at my house, and we're like, what do you think, boys? And they're like, I think you should get it on the highway and drive it 70 miles an hour. And I'm like, I
Work
don't
the
know.
kinks out of it.
I don't know. So one guy like changed the oil because it had been 3.5 months, even though no mileage was put on it. Anyways, we just let it run for like hours and hours. And then I start driving it, and it's somewhat normal. It still has a little weird hesitation, but I'm like, I feel like we're there. I feel like the next time you drive it, it'll be fine. So I get home, and then like an hour later, my brother gets home, and we're like, hey, we missed you. Are you going anywhere tonight? Please say no. Please say no. Oh, no, man, I'm tired. I'll probably go out tomorrow. How's the car? I was like, awesome. And I cleaned it. So that was to like hide the injustice and irresponsibility. You clean it. And the next day, he leaves, and I'm just waiting. It's pre-cell phone, so he actually has to come back and talk to me in person. And he gets home, and I'm waiting for like some kind of reprimand. And I was like, how's the car? He's like, great. No, you did great.
Why do you ask?
No
reason.
No reason. No reason. Yeah. How about when do the Cowboys play? Yeah. So
It's like the end of Ferris Bueller where they're trying to roll the miles back on.
it had a little Ferris Bueller to it, except it's hard to forget. Like the car was sitting there all summer next to my car. And not once until the day before he got home did I think, I should start it and actually do what he said.
Well, all's well that ends well.
That's the way I live.
Does he know this story, or is he likely to hear this on the next episode of the 40 Days to Life podcast?
I don't know. Maybe he'll miss this podcast. It's hard to keep up with every podcast episode. I have not told him this story.
Okay.
So, but my friends all knew because they were like, "You're an idiot."
Well, we've got record listenership of the podcast this year, so if you are tuning in, do not tell Sean's brother.
Don't tell my brother. Thank you. So, but that is a true story and a very funny one. Okay, some good news today, actually. All the stereotypes are out there. Women are dying in the streets. We, meaning the pro-life movement, particularly the evil men in the pro-life movement, we hate 15-year-old rape victims. This is another narrative.
That's what they say.
Yeah, it's very tough job, full-time job, hating rape victims. So there's all this notion of who actually has an abortion, who doesn't have an abortion, who needs an abortion, who wants an abortion. We've covered need a lot, which is no one, because it can't save your life. So today, let's break this down, and we're going to put a lot of this on the screen to keep it very, very simple, but these are great what to say when talking points, apologetic talking points, because this is definitely one of those podcast episodes where the average pro-abortion coworker or aunt or whatever, they don't know this stuff. This is like the opposite of what you hear in the media, but this is the actual facts. Kudos to the pro-life researcher of the century, Steve Carlin, for digging, because it is hard to find who's actually having an abortion, who's not.
It is. The stats are not easy to find. I think that's by design. When we look at abortion data and there's varying estimates each year on just how many abortions are done in the first place, right? It's because there are 42 states that track abortion numbers, and there are 8 that say, who cares? California does not know how many abortions are done within its borders each and every year. So a lot of the official numbers are just done by researchers, Guttmachers, people doing surveys, things like that. The official CDC numbers are really lacking. And that, of course, means that the rest of the data is lacking too, because Guttmacher, Planned Parenthood, they don't really want you to find out that minorities are disproportionately getting abortions compared to the rest of the population.
But here's what's wild about that. I mean, think about what you just said. California has no idea how many abortions they're doing. And what's so crazy about that is that Newsom runs around spending their tax dollars promoting abortion, inviting abortion doctors to move to California. Aren't they in some kind of meeting, some kind of finance meeting, any kind of meeting where a guy's like, this is awesome, man. I stand up for women's rights. I'm so proud to work for you, Governor. How many abortions do we actually do every year here in California? I don't know. That's a stupid question.
Enough.
Not enough. Why would you ask that? Well, I'm just saying it's a big priority. We seem very proud of it, or we're at least providing it. I mean, are people taking advantage of it? I don't know.
Yeah. These guys are like, when you hear the gun control debates, and there's reasonable discussions, I suppose, to be had on who should be carrying and who shouldn't, and what are the restrictions and everything. And then you've got kind of the anti-gun people and this guy thinks you should just be out on the street with a grenade launcher. This is the abortion version of that, and that's what they're doing.
This guy wants to shoot up schools. No, he doesn't. He just said he wanted a rifle.
You think we should even just be tracking how many abortions? No. Not interested.
That's what makes stuff like this really, really fun. So there's a lot of anecdotes that you'll get from Planned Parenthood in the abortion industry about how many abortions are done, who needs abortion, and all of that. And today we're going to kind of give you the facts and the demographics. Okay, so there's 2 sections to this. The first is who's getting the abortion. The second is who is being marketed the abortion and who they're preying upon. So
yeah.
This is kind of like the facts and then the ugly part. All right, Number 1, who is not getting abortions? Children.
Yeah, and this is interesting, I think, because so often we see the abortion industry using these cases like children, which we're about to get into, to justify all abortions. Well, what about the 15-year-old who needs an abortion? Sean, what percentage would you guess, just based on the rhetoric, based on what's covered in the media, based on the abortion debate at large, what percentage of abortions do you think are done on minors under 18 years old?
Under 18? Okay, so high school kids.
Or tragically, sometimes younger.
All abortions nationwide. That's
Yes.
the question. Percentage of minors. 17%.
That's about what I would have guessed. I would have guessed about 20, and the answer is 4%.
No way.
4% of abortions are on minors. So, this will be a common theme throughout the next couple sections of this podcast. We don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because few minors are getting abortions doesn't mean that it's not something that we're going to address and that it doesn't matter. But what this does mean is that for every political ad where you hear about the 15-year-old girl who needs an abortion because if she doesn't get it, she's not going to be able to follow her dreams, all of that sort of thing. These are pretty extreme circumstances. In fact, the majority of those 4% are 16 and 17-year-olds. 15 and younger accounts for just 0.3% of all abortions that are done in the United States.
Okay, so the 14-year-old rape victim, which is definitely on the TV ad, who we work with, and the abortion industry doesn't. They just exploit these poor victims of rape. 15 down is less than 1%. It's 0.4?
0.3.
It's 0.3.
0.3.
Most people don't know that.
No, it would have surprised me too. It did surprise me when I first read it. And
the 4% is surprising.
Yeah, it really is. Almost everybody is at least an adult, but they're marketing toward the kids. They're trying to normalize it. And certainly if you can normalize abortion as something that is a normal part of the teenage experience, it makes it easier to sell. And who is going to have the most abortions? People who have already had abortions. We know that repeat abortions are very, very common. And so if you can try to, wish cast it, if you can try to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy that teenagers are getting abortions. You have your first abortion when you're 15, maybe another when you're 17, couple in college. I mean, it's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah, there's a lot of money to be made. Okay, this next one, which we are going to treat with all due seriousness and respect, but it needs to be said because this is it's a loud segment of the pro-abortion crowd, and they sort of take over everything.
Yeah.
And that is the LGBTQ community. You have a pro-life march, and the counter-protesters have the rainbow flag, which I guess is very disrespectful to gay pro-lifers, but whatever. Okay, the LGBTQ community is not having abortions. It seems like they would be because of their enthusiasm for abortion. It seems obvious they wouldn't for biological reasons, avoiding the transgender issues with that, because they think there's no gender, but gay people certainly know there is. Okay, so they're saying constantly that abortion is impacting the LGBTQ community, that if we overturn Roe, gays and minorities will be hurt. This is just
disproportionately impacted by the abortion bans.
So the stat is, and sounds ridiculous to you, you're not crazy, but we got to say it, 94% of women who get abortions identify as heterosexual.
Yes, and as heterosexual
and the
women.
Sky, it is blue.
Yeah. As heterosexual women, I guess you need to say that because there's the men that are getting abortions now.
Yes, heterosexual
We're an inclusive podcast here at 40 Days for Life. No, this is one of those things where you hear the abortion industry executive leadership saying, these bans disproportionately harm women. You scratch your head and you think, am I taking crazy pills here? Well, if it sounds crazy, like you said, Sean, it is. 94%, presumably. I don't think there's a lot of gay men who are getting abortions because there's 0 gay men who are getting abortions. Sometimes it's just, I think, an exercise in how much abject, obvious nonsense can we say, and the media will just parrot it. The media doesn't really question these claims. Wait, how many men carry the one? Doesn't make any sense, and in fact, the stats bear that out.
How many trans men, so women who think they're men. Mm-hmm. So they're trans men, but they're women. How many abortions do they have?
I don't think very many. I couldn't find stats on it because it is so rare. I guess there's the whole bisexual thing.
But don't they use that to say men have abortions too?
Yeah. There was a BuzzFeed article not long ago about the men who have abortions and why. I don't want to know why.
I don't want to know. Yeah, I don't want to know any of it. Keep your buzz and keep your feed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Number 3, and this is another, because we did a podcast, one of the podcasts on sexual abuse and rape, and we did it with Matt Britton, our general counsel, who was a prosecutor for 4 elected terms. And of course, he worked very closely with rape victims, and we've worked closely with rape victims. And the assumption, sadly, and he illustrated it from the government, but certainly from the culture, is this happened to you and you need an abortion, which is just taking complete advantage of a vulnerable victim. It's awful that tragedy solves tragedy. And we've covered rape a lot on the podcast. Here we're just going to cover the stats. Number 1, rape victims really don't have a lot of abortions. It's 1% of all abortions. When you see the marketing, that's why even in apologetics, I don't think obviously we're against a baby being aborted because her or his dad is a rapist or a criminal. We usually root for the underdogs in our country, kids that come from bad homes or bad parents. We root for them. We don't do it with abortion. We say you're useless, your dad's a criminal, or your mom's on drugs or whatever it is. So we judge the unborn. But the fact that in all marketing, if you were to say, okay, we'll allow abortions for rape, the abortion industry wouldn't take that because it's 1% of their business.
No, and that's why a lot of except for Alabama, I think every state that has an abortion ban has a rape exception. And guess what? Planned Parenthoods are still closing. Other abortion facilities are still closing. If they can't do elective abortions, as they call them, the exceptional cases are not enough to keep those doors open. And this is where, again, we be very careful, of course, because if you're in that 1%, it means everything to
matters to you.
And just as Matt cared about them, we care about them. We've worked with them. We've tried to help with their healing. We've tried to help meet their needs, all of those sorts of things. It's critical. But the reason we bring it up in particular is not to say, we can just dismiss that 1% of rape victims. The reason we bring this up is because, again, every abortion is justified based on these hard cases. And it's, I think, disingenuous. I think it exploits the women who have already suffered enough.
That's why in conversation, we shouldn't avoid rape. And we put that in What to Say When. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast because the pro-abortion crowd puts everything into rape. So instead of sort of hiding it like, I'm pro-life and I don't want to discuss this, I'm going to sound like I hate rape victims, you don't. You're the only one that actually loves the rape victim. And you've heard them. I've heard testimonials of women who were raped and chose life, and then ones who were raped and chose abortion. And it's devastating after a rape to have an abortion. 2 anniversaries, which we would never think about, they do. They have the anniversary of the rape, they have the anniversary of the abortion, and one reminds them of the other. And you're never going to hear that from the abortion industry. All they're going to do is put them in front of a camera and get them on TV and say, this is what happened to me. And they exploit rape victims. But I don't think we should run from the rape topic. We should know how to discuss it and do so sensitively and talk about the rapist going to prison, talk about how the baby does exist. And the mom, you're not just waking up one day and it's over. Abortion as a surgery is not designed to heal a rape. It's not designed to heal trauma. It's not like you walk out of the Planned Parenthood going, I finally have peace, and that's the way they sell it. It's not it at all. Now you're post-abortive.
In fact, some of those issues, the trauma, are perpetuated, right? Because we did the magazine article, I think, or I can't remember which piece we did, but we did a piece with a woman who was a victim of her mother was a victim of incest, and the father was able to continue to abuse his own daughter solely because, this was the magazine, solely because abortion was there as a tool to cover up the evidence of his crimes.
Yeah,
and so
over the years.
Yeah, it just perpetuates it, and it's shameful. It's the most loving thing that can be done is for that baby to be born, the mother can love that child, and the father, the abuser, can be brought to justice. There's nothing that is loving about destroying the evidence of a crime.
And you can give the baby up for adoption, which most rape victims who choose life do give the baby up for adoption. I had a friend in college, and his mom was raped at 14. And he spoke out in front of this building, the now closed Planned Parenthood. And all the workers came out, Abby came out. And he said, I'm still a product of rape today. I mean, am I less valuable than all of you? It's very powerful. I don't know who's going to say that. But that's a good question. Like, at what point are you not a product of rape?
Mm-hmm. And there's really no answer for this objection, right? Like, I think the abortion industry sees rape as the get out of jail free card. It's the trump card. You play that card and we're supposed to go scurrying away. And I really think whether it be your friend who has that powerful testimony or the women who have endured it and were saved from future abuse by the birth of their child, I think really that's, I wouldn't say it's a trump card because we're not playing games here the way the abortion industry does, but I think it's really irrefutable argument that, look, it may sound compassionate to allow abortion in some cases, but it in fact is anything but compassionate.
Totally true. It's totally true. I think it's merciless because they have to lay on that table and they're told it's going to solve it. It doesn't. And you just have two things that you bury. That's what they all say. I mean, they're not going to run around and talk about the rape a lot. But now it's followed by an abortion because everybody asks, did you get pregnant? And then they say yes, or they say no and lie, and they're dealing with that. But burying it is the last thing that you need to do. And it's really remarkable on the positive side of this, which I guess abortion advocates just say, but the ones who choose life and give the baby up for adoption are Ronan, who we had on the podcast. Check that out. You know, she was raped when she went for a jog in college. And she gave the baby up for adoption, but she was able to walk across and get her college degree holding her beautiful baby girl after everybody told her life was over and she needed to have an abortion, including professors, including family, everybody. And it's so awesome. But those women who give the baby up for adoption or choose life talk about that was the hope after the tragedy. That truly was, the sunlight after the storm. And we don't want to think about that. We don't want to think of good endings. We want abortion will solve your problems. And anybody who says otherwise is heartless. And we don't have to run for the hills. We should embrace the topic because let them bring it up and say, you want to talk about rape? I'll talk about rape.
The people who are trying to sell you a quick fix usually do not have your best interests in mind.
Yeah. One of the things that Matt said on that podcast too, which is I'd never heard, very powerful from the woman, and abortion advocates will say this, you want to force the woman to have her rapist baby, which is just so good night. I think her dad had said that because Matt was encouraging her, you need to really look at adoption. And the dad said something, or somebody had told her, they were in private. And she said, so-and-so said, you're forced to carry your rapist baby. And she said, it is not my rapist baby. It is my baby. He forfeited all rights over this child with his crime.
We interviewed for the magazine, for Day 41 magazine, Paula from Memphis, who she was a victim of an assault, multiple assailants, and she became pregnant. And she was part of sort of a progressive church, you might say. And she got run out of her church for choosing life. They said, your child is going to be a monster. The father was a monster. Your child will be a monster too. Not welcome anymore.
Yeah, you want to say special place in hell for people who spread that kind of stuff, but that is That is so, to say that to her, okay, as she made this courageous decision, but to say that, but as they're saying it, she is still a healing victim. Mm-hmm. You were attacked by a monster. That's the message.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that this is why going like big picture, all of this, the whole abortion crisis is such an attack on the virtue of hope. The virtue of hope. There's no good. Your daddy was a monster. You're going to be a monster from the church.
Yeah, this is the one case where they believe in original sin, right? There's no redemption for it.
Absolutely no redemption. And they have no clue. Don't judge lest you be judged. I mean, where's the fear in that? That kid could cure cancer. He may not. He may not. He may be a criminal. But he doesn't get to live.
And there's talk about, particularly on this issue, there's talk about victim shaming and that very real and tragic sense where victims oftentimes tend to blame themselves. The last thing we need is somebody else coming in and blaming you for the way that you handle it by courageously choosing life for your child. It's unacceptable in a civilized society, I think.
So when you back up her in that article, the whole women empowerment, like she's empowered. Think of what she overcame: the abuse, the assault, the pregnancy, choosing life, idiotic church, all of that.
Yeah. So much for pro-choice, right? She made a choice.
No,
they didn't stand by her.
No. Especially with rape. That's why we can't run from it. Because when you stump them, not to use that word, that's not what we're trying to do, but when you make a point and they think, maybe I'm the jerk in all of this, it goes a long way. It goes a long way because then you get to just, I just want an abortion. Mm-hmm. I mean, and then it's high tide for us. Okay, rape victims are not getting abortions. They're 1%, and that 1%, I think what's shocking about it being the 1% is that's the most understandable reason people get one. That's the one where most people, including apparently a lot of churches in Memphis, say, okay, this is understandable, even emotionally, even if you're against all abortion like we are, which you should be. We're not wanting to get rid of anyone because of who the circumstances of their conception. But let's say you're an exception person, or not an exception person. You can understand the clouded mentality that would lead somebody, I was raped, instantly I'm going to have an abortion, and yet it's 1%. So, okay. Number 4 of who is not getting abortions. Women who aren't ready to parent and having a child that would ruin the lives of both mother and baby.
Yeah, that's what we hear all the time, right? You're too young, you're too poor, you're too whatever, you're not
ready to have a kid.
You're not ready to have a kid.
And you already have a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. But
same with me. Have you ever been ready? You and Laura, let's talk about this. I want to stop. Because the whole you're ready to have a baby. And a lot of parents do this. Mary Lisa and I have said to ourselves we're not doing this and we're not, to our kids. But you're not ready to have a child. And who has been ready?
For anything, really. There's just so much in life that the only way to get ready for it is by doing it. If we were ready for everything that we did, we would never accomplish anything.
I think there's an exception. I think that Michael Jordan was ready for the 98 playoff run.
He had the flu.
It didn't matter. He had food poisoning. It wasn't the flu.
Okay.
He was poisoned by the Utah pizza guy. That came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's documentary that you saw with Michael Jordan. But, it came out later. They made up the flu because he was actually food poisoned by a pizza guy. He ordered a pizza at midnight.
No kidding.
This is back in the 90s. They're eating pizza before the game 6.
Smoking
cigars and drinking. And it's like, now I think they're like eating salmon, avocados, and going to bed at 7:30 at night.
Should we go to bed?
No, let's order some pizza, man. I'm starving. What if the pizza guy poisons us? What are you talking about? It's Utah, salt of the earth. So, anyways, I think he was prepared. Like that's a secular example of, I don't know if anything's going to really crack Michael Jordan on this final NBA Finals run of his entire career. And it didn't. But no one has ever said, we are ready to be parents.
No, and anyone who has is quickly proven wrong, I think. I mean, there's nothing that can really prepare you for it. It's a completely unique experience, I think, in human life, is welcoming a child into the world. Whether you do it once, whether you do it 10 times, it's every time is just this remarkable thing, and you're never prepared for it, but you find a way.
Who wants to be prepared for it?
No. I think some of the best things in life are the things where you just go for it.
But you're not prepared for it. It's not like you're not prepared to drive across the country and you don't have enough gas money, or you didn't rotate the car tires, or you don't have a map, or, you didn't bring the car charger for your phone. It's not that. It's you're not ready. You're prepared, but not as prepared as you could be. Nobody is. But no matter what comes up, you will find a way, because it's your kid.
Yeah.
And people forget the kid part, because naturally you would do anything for your kids, especially your little unborn baby. So the motivation is endless. I think it actually makes a good pro-abortion argument, because you can't refute it. You're not ready to have a child. And in the right context, especially if you're a young woman and you're in college and you're scared and your boyfriend's doing the stupid whatever you decide, I'll support you, or he's just gone. That's the case a lot. I'm pregnant, he's gone. It's effective. You're not ready to have a baby. What's she going to say? Yes, I am. She didn't even want to be pregnant in the first place.
That gets back sort of to what you said about abortion is just an attack on the virtue of hope, right? There's no way you're going to get through this. There's no reason to even try getting through this. Let's just pull the plug right now. And imagine if we pursued everything in life like that. Well, are you ready for this marathon? Yeah, you're right. I guess I'll stop training for it. Are you ready to go to college? No, just give up on it. Are you ready to go to work? There's part of the human experience which involves not having complete control and mastery over the most important things that you take on.
I would like to participate in a great practice that I'm a fan of, and that is accusing myself. I think on the podcast, the kids podcast that we did, yes. Disasters, and so I have 8 kids, and everybody's like, oh man, and sometimes it's old man positive, sometimes it's old man negative, but it's always old man like, oh, 8 kids, a lot of kids. And it is. So I should be ready. I should be an expert. Mary Lisa goes into labor. Psh, this is like firing up the barbecue grill. Like, I know what to do. I know where the lighter fluid is. This ain't no big deal. I got it. I forgot clothes when Timothy was born, our number 8. I didn't have my toothbrush. I was like, yeah, let's go in. I thought, she's not having the baby. That's never happened before. All 7, she feels something, it's over. We were holding a baby 5 hours later. Every time. For some reason, number 8, I'm like, idiot. Didn't take a change of clothes. Had to go to Walmart, buy clothes. Didn't take a toothbrush, no deodorant. Our hospital was like an hour from our house. So there's all this traffic. So I just stayed over there and went to Walmart. I should be ready to have a kid. I wasn't. So this whole notion that you're ready, you're not ready. And let me say something else, because we're going to get to the stat on the women not ready and all that. But I think there's 2 categories here. There's you're young and pregnant and your life is ruined. You're not ready. But then there's another one. I think it's more common for the viewer and the listener. And that is, you could be married. You could be 23. I got married at 21. You got married at 21?
22.
22. We had our first, Mary Lisa got pregnant when I was, I think, 22 or 23. I had Bridget when I was 23. I think we didn't, fortunately. But I think a lot of couples, could be the parents, could be the grandparents, could be the unsolicited commentary from the uncle. You just may not have enough money to have a baby right now.
Yeah, you need a house, you need your 401k, you need your stock options, At what point does one have enough money to have a child? I don't know. I don't think it's an answerable question, is it?
Never. And there's two sides of it, right? You can't have no plan and be like, we're in love, we're married, and you shouldn't get married if you have like no plan. That's not what marriage is based on. But this whole notion, I mean, my in-laws, they got married. My father-in-law went to medical school afterwards. So it was a long road of school. They were juniors in college. They had nothing. And then he goes to medical school where you're just totally broke. Then you go to residency, and they had 3 kids by the time he was a resident. You don't make anything as a resident. So it's like by the time he's like 30 or 31, you actually have an income, right? But then they had 4 kids. They didn't even think about it. But they had a plan. I mean, you can't just sit here and go, we're going to 10 bar at Applebee's the rest of our life and have 6 kids. Obviously, we're not saying that. But what's wrong with figuring it out?
Yeah, and this is where I sometimes stop and think, Sean, how many 50th anniversary parties have you been to where like somebody toasts the couple that's been married for 50 years and then they say, we're just so grateful. It was easy from the beginning. We never had a struggle. No, those couples don't stay together and they don't succeed in life. You like forge your way through with God's help and grace and mercy, and you suffer through a lot from beginning to end. There's trouble and there's turmoil, but if you think that that's all gonna, it's all great from square one, day one, living in a fantasy world. The best marriages, I think, are really built on struggling together. Totally.
And it's beautiful. And one thing I thought you were going to say that you didn't is the other thing you don't hear at the 50th wedding anniversary is old man George or old lady Mary Lou say, it's just been beautiful. It's been wonderful. We're so glad to have our grandkids and our great-grandkids here. I just have a message to everybody on this joyous occasion. We just got married too young.
Yeah.
It's like been 50 years. I wanted to wait till 1945, until after the war. He didn't want to wait. We got married in 43. It's just too soon.
Nor do you hear, as you hear at the like Hollywood Awards acceptance speech thing, it wouldn't be possible for me to stand here today before you and celebrate this 50th wedding anniversary except for my right to choice.
See, I don't think you can make that joke anymore because some goofball's probably going to do it or something. We've had a lot of weird things at the Oscars, including the nominations. Okay. Women who aren't ready to parent. 61% of women getting abortions have given birth to at least one child.
Yeah, so I guess that ship has sailed, huh?
Yep.
Also, more than a third of the women who are getting abortions say they're doing so because their family is complete. So we've got less than 1% for rape, far fewer than that for incest, life, all these things that are commonly used to market abortion. They're not the reasons why, but a third, 1 in 3 women, it's because our families are done. So it's not that you're not ready, you just don't want to have anymore.
Yeah, it's totally different. Okay, number 5.
By the way, I just want to add there, I don't want to sound like I'm blaming the women. This is obviously, at that point, it's like a couple's decision, but they just don't want to have anymore. I mean, we saw that from Cecile Richards, right? That was her.
Well, and it may not even be the women. The dad may not want anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times it could be one or the other or both. But, I know a lot of couples, and he's done with kids or she's done with kids, and, despite what the trans people say, they both need to participate.
Yeah. So I think it does a lot of damage to the marriage.
Number 5. Who's not having an abortion? This has got Steve Carlin written on. I know you wrote this section. Women who will die without an abortion. They're not having abortions.
Roe was overturned quite a while ago, and we're still waiting for the first report of the woman who has died from not having access to choice.
Great. Abortion is not healthcare talking point here. This is it. This actually trumps rape. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hillary Clinton, June 24th, 2022. First tweet, overturning a Roe. Women will die.
Where are the Washington Post fact checkers when you need them?
Who's died? how did they die? Who's going to die tomorrow? So heart failure, cancer, weird stuff you and I have never heard of that doctors say. You know, we had a friend up in Virginia, died of a very rare thing that no one gets, right? Some blood poisoning thing that was very, very, very rare. Never even heard of it. Probably won't hear of it again. He died. Even those random small statistic things, you can go somewhere and find someone, he or she will die from this. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen. The heart's going to go out. The cancer is spreading. The whatever. This is happening. This will eventually poison his system. His nerves will give out. All over the place. This will kill he or she. You can't do that with abortion. There's nobody in a hospital right now where they say, if she doesn't get an abortion, she's going to die. In 2023, and by the way, we should be grateful for that. We shouldn't be hiding it like the abortion industry. The abortion industry want people's lives in danger so they can sell abortion. Not to that person, but to, 1 million abortions a year.
And let's say that everything, we've said many times that an abortion is never needed to save a woman's life. We've proven it with testimonies from doctors, with statistics, things like that. Even if you grant the premise, even if we were wrong about all of that, and there is a case where abortion is performed to save a life. We know there's doctors who try to claim that. Suzanne Guy's doctor told her that she needed to get an abortion to save her life. She said, no, Rachel is now the 40 Days for Life leader of the year with her mother. And so even in those cases where the doctors are doing abortions supposedly to save the life of the mother, I mentioned that a lot of the states aren't keeping any track of numbers. One state that does keep track of abortion statistics very well is Florida. And they have tracked how many women have abortions in order to supposedly save their own lives. And the number they came up with was 0.15%.
Where do they even get that number?
I guess it's just reported when you're going through the paperwork or something
so
like that.
Even when they're reporting, I'm doing this because I'm going to die or it's to save my life.
0.15%.
Okay, switching gears. So let me recap real quick. Who's not having abortions? Children, minors, the LGBTQ community. We got to put that on there, as awkward as it is. Rape victims, women who aren't ready to parent and having a child would ruin the lives of both mother and baby. And the last group, women who will die without an abortion. They are not having abortions. Okay, so who is? This is the frustrating part. This is not in the marketing talking points. It is in the eugenics section. Okay. Here's who the abortion industry is preying upon. The poor. Can't have poor people. And all you got to do is listen to the news media. This will hurt Alito, Amy Coney Barrett. This is going to hurt poor Black and Latino women.
Yeah, and
because they can't get abortions, and we cannot have poor Black and Latino babies, and that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. If you're poor, you're far more at risk of an abortion, and it's by design. The abortion facilities are put up in low-income neighborhoods. They're put up in minority neighborhoods. No wonder. There's a target market there. And when we talk poor, of all women who get abortions, about half of them, if they're single, living alone, they're making about $15,000 a year. It's not a great income. So it's not just sort of like relatively poor, like when we were struggling when we were young. It's people who are actually in poverty, low income. If you're poor, you are 5 times more likely to have an abortion than the general public at large.
So this brings up a political issue, and I'm very conservative, and we'll kind of be edgy here in case you can leave your comments or disagree on the YouTube channel. We're all big boys and girls here. But so Greg Abbott, who is the most pro-life governor in the country for sure, now post-Roe, but even before Roe, we had this in Texas. There's a lot of tax funding. We have a surplus. Texas has a $37 billion surplus. It's the 9th largest economy in the world in Texas. So fortunately, we have the money, but they allocate money for women who choose life to assist them. Now you're in Texas and some, conservatives are like, no government, I support that, Because the way I see it, if they're going to give Planned Parenthood $500 million, they better help the woman who actually chooses life. Also, on the big picture, I think the whole idea of free markets was crushed with the New Deal by FDR. So I gave up a long time ago. Even though I wasn't born after World War II, I was like, once.
I'm sure anybody who opposed this money for the women who choose life surely mailed back their stimulus check during the COVID era.
Absolutely, but I just want you to know I go Great Depression FDR on
Yeah.
people whenever they bring that up, because I'm like, we're not socialists, but we've pretty much done everything to get there in the last, since the Great Depression, and especially since COVID. I mean, Trump was mailing people checks, Obama did it. So anyways, we might as well do it for the women who are actually choosing life. It's the best investment because without children, we have no future as a country. Mm-hmm. And if we abort them all, we're not going to have any taxpayers. So to put it fiscally.
Yeah.
The poor have a lot of access. And I would say, to their credit, pro-abortion people typically support that. And there are liberal states that will subsidize and help women who choose life. Not all of them. They'll much rather pay for your abortion, just like corporate America. Get back to work. Here's your $7,000. Fly to California, have an abortion. Our military is now doing it. The Pentagon will pay for your abortion. Now get back to work. But a lot of them will also pay for prenatal care. Okay. The poor are number one. Number two, man, people get offended, but this is the reality. Who is getting abortions? Women on birth control.
If we just had more access to contraception, we could get rid of abortion. Fact check, false. Anytime you see a report in the media about the abortion rate dropping, the secular press at least are quick to say, oh, this is due to increased access to birth control. And then we find out that a majority of women who have abortions were using contraception the month they conceived. So I don't really know that that's a very convincing argument.
In the early 2000s, it was 63% of women were on the pill who got an abortion.
Okay.
Year in and year out. It was pretty consistent. That is not what people would think. So
no, it's not. But it's the way it works.
That's just the pill. That's not other forms of contraception, but that was just the pill.
And the argument to that, they come in and say, well, we now have what they call LARC, the long active reversible contraception, I think is what it stands for. We're talking about like having the IUD placed or things like that where it's long term. Well, that's where we talked to our friend, Professor Michael New, who leads our Washington, D.C. 40 Days for Life campaign and is sort of the brain of the pro-life movement. He said, look, those long-acting contraceptives, like women hate them and they don't stay on them long term. So it's kind of a red herring to suggest that, okay, yes, this is the form of contraception that at last will reduce the abortion rate. We've been trying for decades, guys. It's time to give up.
It's so true. So women who are on birth control, they're having abortions. Okay. The other group that is targeted by the abortion industry, baby girls. Let me start with China. We're starting with China, but it's not just in China. However, in China, what's his name? Now it's slipping my mind. But their prime minister.
Xi?
Sure, we'll take it. He is now complaining that they don't have a populace.
It's a shame they couldn't have done something about that.
And he is frantic and he's panicking. It was a great article. The media covered it because he did a press conference. And he went on this rant about how they don't have any children. They had the one-child policy. And under the one-child policy, 85% of the abortions were done on baby girls. 85%. Not a feminist to be found on that. Not to mention forced abortion. So what do? They realize, because his point is we're going to have a huge economy and no one to run it or support it. And so they got rid of the one-child policy and they allowed 2 children, which still doesn't replace you. You need 2.1. And he's complaining about it. And Putin, who no one is a big fan of, Putin's given like $25,000 to Russians who have another kid. I mean, you see Italy, Germany, they're all giving these huge tax incentives, like $50,000 if you have 2 kids and you need a down payment on a house. I mean, not like $3,000 a kid or whatever it is, in different parts of America or in the United States. It's like $50,000 to help build a house if you have 3 kids or something, because they don't have any Italians or Germans or Russians because they've aborted them all or contracepted them out of existence. And this is something we don't think about. And when we had Dr. Leighton Field on, the demographer, the sociologist, he said, I think it was in the conference in South Korea, wherever he was at a sociology conference, and the room, most of the sociologists are nuts. He's the exception of the rule, of course. But 50-50. Are we overpopulated? Underpopulated. Half the sociologists think we're underpopulated.
It's why Elon Musk is engineering the robot takeover of everything, right? Because he said there's not enough people. We need robots to do the work for us.
And he said he's not doing the Mother Teresa or John Paul thing where he's like, you want to change the world, go love your family, go have children. He's not doing that. He's saying you need to go have kids. That was his message. Of course, he's like 9 or something. But I think there's multiple moms. But I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know what that is.
Family,
but he has a lot of kids. And that's an issue. And China's sitting here complaining. I mean, this is.
And the sex selection abortions have really been exported here. There's some fascinating research. We won't get deep into it because it's kind of into the weeds, but you see particularly among second and third births where, okay, so we had 1 baby and we had a girl, we can try again. By the time you start hitting your second or third baby, you're looking to wrap it up. And so if it's not the boy that you're looking for, you get an abortion. And there's evidence looking by the social scientists into those numbers that suggest that there are thousands of girls who have been aborted here, not in China, but here in the United States, solely because they are girls.
But it's pro-woman.
I thought we were the ones waging the war on women.
No.
I guess not.
And they get ignored. I mean, that's why people get mad, but it is a man's world. Mm-hmm. This whole thing is a man's world. I mean, this is just like the back room. We can have sex with them and they won't do anything, and then they'll have to have an abortion and we don't even need to be there, and, then we can abort all the girls. I mean, if you want the most evil, male, chauvinist, unresponsible loser, this is just like paradise. And throw in that he's a racist, because we'll get to that.
Well, the bad men kind of flows right into our next point, right?
Single women are being targeted. 86%. 86% of all abortions, single women.
Yeah, I'm actually somewhat surprised it's not higher than that, but single women are getting abortions because the men are not standing by them. They've got no commitment. They have made no commitment. They have no interest in making any commitment. And now here, great. What was the phrase that was thrown around a couple of years ago? I'm bro-choice.
I'm bro-choice. Of course you are.
Tell the woman you're going to leave her if she won't have the abortion.
The thing is, this is common sense, and it's funny. We make fun of it in sitcoms and in movies, how men want to use women. We know what you're looking for. All those kind of innuendos and those jokes. And then we just fall into it as a culture. Give men sex, that's all they want. They don't want you. And they leave, and you're stuck with the baby, so you have an abortion. And somehow we think men aren't winning in this. Mm-hmm. I mean, bad men are totally winning. They're the only beneficiaries. And all you've got to do is talk to men who regret their abortion experience, or men who tried to talk their girlfriend out of an abortion, or whatever it is, and you'll get more at the root of it. But there's a lot of men that are like, I don't know what she did. And they don't care. It's not on them. It's in the Planned Parenthood workers do it. It's on the woman. Well, maybe you regret your abortion, but at least you had that choice.
Mm-hmm. So. And this is why they go after the pregnancy help centers, right? Because if the man isn't there to support her the way that she should, well, the pregnancy help center will help stand in the gap. Oh, I guess we got to get rid of them too.
Okay, we put this off, but this is way up there. Not a whole lot needs to be said. Who the abortion industry is targeting? Black women. Black women, 39% of all abortions. They make up 13.6% of the U.S. population, but they're not being targeted. It's the one racial issue they're not being targeted on.
How wonderful that in a land of such inequality, they at least finally have the benefit of widespread abortions.
I'm telling you. And Dr. Alveda King, the niece of MLK, God bless her, she's been screaming this at the top of her lungs. Dr. Haywood Robinson, who's a former abortion doctor, works for us, screaming this at the top of their lungs. There was one study, and you're a political dork, so this is outrageous to me when you consider slavery. I would say three things: slavery, segregation, overcoming those two, even though everybody thinks we still have slavery and like NFL owners are the new slave owner, all that, not the absurd, stupid stuff, but actual slavery, segregation, and the election of Barack Obama. So let's take those three things, all of which were huge victories for Black America. We don't like Obama, but not because he's black, but because he was horrible. Okay, those three things in context, that there are multiple studies that show the black vote will be insignificant in 2035 because of abortion. And insignificant is a category. Like, for instance, now the Asian vote is considered insignificant because of the size of the population of Asians here. So you know, vets are a big one, Black America, Latinos, people on Medicaid, all that stuff where you have the politicians go out with their talking points. They're never talking, about they're going to do more for the Asian community because the vote is considered insignificant. And Black America is headed towards that after all this. And nobody wants to pay attention to it. They are aborting their future. And talk about the real winner in that is Mr. Actual Racist guy. Not woke racist, like, the way you ordered that sandwich is racist, or the Washington Redskins are racist. Not just everything is racist, but like the actual racist, I don't like black people and I don't want them to be part of our country. He loves this. He absolutely loves this abortion statistic.
Yeah, no doubt. It's I think you covered it.
Yeah. Was that enough? By the way, great what to say win point. Just share the number. So Black America makes up so Black women make up 39% of all abortions, yet the population is only 13.6 of America. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Ask your abortion supporter that. Okay, who else are they preying upon? Repeat customers. And this is just any market. This could be McDonald's or whatever, but it certainly is abortion. 42% of all abortions are repeat abortions.
And that, I think, is in some ways surprising because nobody uses abortion as birth control. Well, obviously, that's not exactly, really abortion is the ultimate birth control. Like, that's what it is. But it's also being used cavalierly as such. It's not, okay, you think everybody's like, okay, one mistake, like it's kind of like you get this one as a mulligan, like you're golfing or something like that. But no, there's a lot of repeat abortions. And in fact, 8% of all abortions are the fourth or higher abortion that a woman has. So they are establishing a market. I think this is why we have talked about Planned Parenthood wanting to sexualize children. If you can get them in the customer base at 15, you're going to sell a lot more over her lifetime than you will if it's later in life.
Abby Johnson said many times, and it was in this building that it happened, where a woman was having her 8th abortion, and she was like, "What's wrong with you?" Mm-hmm. And she said other workers, they were all making fun of her behind her back.
Still cash the check, though.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. Steve going in for the gut punch. I like that. Still cashing the check. All right. There we go. Hot take there. It's totally true. All right. The last group that's being targeted, disabled babies. It wasn't a while back where that Democrat in Massachusetts, he said, hey, all these disabled kids, if they're not aborted, they're going to be a drag on our health care.
Yeah.
Why did he get canceled? That's one of the top 3 arguments of why we need abortion.
It's plain to the
rape,
base.
Incest, life of the mother. The child could be disabled.
And this is frankly how we see the justification for the late-term abortions, right? Like you might not know your baby's disabled until 20, maybe 24 weeks.
Totally.
So you've got to allow the late-term abortions. And by the way, they never happen, right? Nobody gets an abortion in their 6th, 7th, 8th month. Nobody, I would say, is a relative term. Abortions in the second half of pregnancy are only about 1% of all abortions, but let's go back and take a look at how many that means. That means we're talking like 8,000 a year. That's about 23 abortions a day. Think about all of the discourse that we've had on things like, say, school shootings, mass shootings the last few years. Like mass shooting, that's like a mass shooting a day. And we're not just waving our hands back. I mean, it's only 1% of all shootings are mass shootings in a school. We take it seriously.
Yeah. And Iceland in 2018 bragged that they eradicated Down syndrome because through abortion, they owned it because they did all the tests. It was mandatory. Baby had Downs. They were aborted. So no Downs kids walking around in Iceland. You can eradicate anything if you kill the people that have it.
Imagine an effort to eradicate obesity or color blindness. There's a lot of things you can eradicate if you kill enough
Northerners. People. Sorry, was that too close? You could eradicate.
You really know how to cut to the core of me.
Left-handed people. Mary Lisa and I need to look out. We're both lefties. I know. I told her every day they're gonna come after us. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then, of course, they're just the most joyful. This is the sickest part of us. I mean, this is actually, I went to Auschwitz. That was the first thing, the first people sent to Auschwitz were disabled people. That was the first thing the Nazis did, was round up all the disabled people.
Yeah, that's where I think Pope Benedict was accused of being like the Nazi Pope because he was mandatorily conscripted into the Hitler Youth. He lost, was a cousin who was killed in the concentration camps due to Down syndrome. This is one of the most disturbing things because last year we did the podcast where we took a look at young Americans' attitudes on abortion, and most of them were very encouraging. Like, oh yeah, most people oppose abortion after the heartbeat can be detected or for sex selection purposes. The majority, the baby's disabled. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
By the way, you brought up the Pope Benedict thing. That it's like the typical media Hitler. It's like if you were a child in Germany, you were put in the Hitler Youth. Like so Pope Benedict didn't run out and join the Hitler Youth, but it was mandatory. It says the worst about us, and what's very powerful in Auschwitz is and sad and are the piles of crutches and prosthetic limbs that they took off those with disabilities before they gassed them. What in the world would that pile look like with abortion and disabilities? Sorry for the dark point as we close out, but that pile, Iceland, that's a scary pile on Judgment Day.
This is why we go out to the sidewalks.
This is why we go out on the sidewalks. It really is. And that's, we want to recap because, and we'll put this on the screen because these are things that people don't know, I think, also in everyday, life. Who is and isn't getting abortion? Okay, here is who's not getting an abortion. Children, minors, are only making up of, it's 0.3% younger or 15 and under. 4% total of all minors, 18 and under. The LGBTQ community are not getting abortions, in case you didn't know that. Rape victims, they're just 1%, although that's the number one selling point. You would think they would make up a much larger percentage of all abortions. Women who aren't ready to parent, they're number 4 on our list of not having an abortion. Women who will die without an abortion, they're not getting abortion. So who is? Who is the abortion industry preying upon? The poor. Women on birth control, they're getting abortions. Baby girls are being preyed upon with sex selection abortion. Single women make up 86% of all abortions. Black women Okay? They make up 40% of all abortions, even though they're under 14% of the U.S. population. Repeat customers, 42% of abortions are repeats. 8% are the fourth abortion or more. And our last one, children with disabilities. They're being preyed upon. So that is our list. Be sure to rate, review, share this podcast. Also, use this podcast as an opportunity to get people to subscribe to the YouTube channel. So we've had a lot of people subscribe. The videos have been great. The podcast has gotten a great response. We're having a record year of downloads, not even counting the additional YouTube views for those of you who we've added through YouTube. We didn't lose audio listeners. We just gained YouTube viewers. So thank you for watching this. And be sure to subscribe to YouTube because you will get the podcast a day early if you do so. You'll get it on Monday for those of you who obviously just can't wait to get it. So thank you, Steve. Thank you. Rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time.